Tsundoku, noun. Language of origin, Japanese. Meaning, the act of acquiring books but allowing them to pile up unread.
In the early 1990s, the company Psikyo shot across the bow of the arcade battlefield with Sengoku Ace. When the classic arcade industry faded at the turn of the century, so did Psikyo. NIS America has released a dozen of their best titles across 2 collections for the Nintendo Switch, focusing on the scrolling shooter bona fides of the company. My call sign is Chad Bonin. Take flight as my co-pilot as we dive into D-pads and DLC, a look at retro and retro-inspired games. With the help of the Flip Grip, we'll check out Psikyo Shooting Stars Alpha and Bravo. Are the 2 collections the air boss, or are they behind the power curve?
Comics, games, animation, and a variety of henshin credible superhero shows from Japan. Chad Bonin guides you through the Tsundoku Zone. A copy of the following was supplied for review purposes.
But thoughts and opinions are my own. To be clear, we're covering 2 different collections in this episode, both bundling together 6 titles. Additionally, both were made available in physical limited editions, collecting art with soundtracks, which I can't speak to as I have the eShop releases. Simply put, we've got 12 arcade titles to fly through, so it's time to speed read. Strikers 1945. Somewhat of a baseline for the traditional titles in the collection, players can pick one of 6 planes with different weapon effects changing the gameplay alongside personalized bombs. Theoretically set after World War II, with Gundams and giant enemy crabs, every other title in the collection builds off this one, both expanding gameplay and absurdity. Strikers 1945, 2. After the success of the first one, Psikyo came back for more of the same. To change things up, the player has a super bar, but with the collection's autofire being a standard option, this aspect will soon be forgotten. This title is notable for offering up a flying pancake as a player ship. Strikers 1945, 3. Rounding out the military shooting trilogy in the collection, the early days of bullet hell can be seen here. Building off the second iteration, this title advances towards the new millennium with expansive sprites, but little in the expansion of gameplay. Soul Divide. Here's where the developers get a bit out there. One of the most ambitious shooters of its time, this title combines magic, ranged, and close combat attacks in a branching storyline with multiple paths to take. There's a bit more strategy in this title, as using physical attacks will net better points and perks, but can be slower and leave yourself open. It may seem superficial, but the bombs in this game seem to have that extra bit of power. Dragon Blaze. Strikers with a different visual style. This title follows Soul Divide by focusing on a world of magic, but with an interesting twist. Your character is paired with a dragon, which you can temporarily leave to fight on 2 fronts. You can allow your dragon to stay in one location and hammer away at the boss, while your character flies off to pick up power-ups. Zero Gunner 2. This title screams Sega Dreamcast, and learning that the original arcade title was released on the Sega Naomi platform, it all comes together. Visually distinct from the others for its use of rotating 3D backgrounds and cinematics, the gameplay is unique in that your helicopter can rotate around a target. This significant change turns the game into more of a Robotron retread than the evolutionary lineage of Space Invaders. Samurai Aces. If Strikers 1945 started the mainline military series, this title, known in Japan as Tsundoku Ace Tengai Episode 1, starts the Goofy Gaiden franchise. With much of the same gameplay, this title has a heavy Japanese influence both visually and audibly. Plus, you get Sentai ninjas that form a combining robot, so the bar for this franchise already starts high. Tengai. A full sequel to Samurai Aces in Japan, where it was known as Sengoku Blade, the game moves from a top-down to a side-scrolling shooter. Tsukasa Jun provides character art, which is used to enhance the story. Sengoku Canon. Finishing the trilogy, this title follows Zero Gunner 2 with the use of distracting 3D backgrounds, but balances this out with multiple weapon modes and character art by Tsukasa Jun.
あなたに負けるわけにはいかないの。この城の中には入れ。
Notably, this is actually a PlayStation Portable original title. Gunbird. Once released as Mobile Light Force in America, this is definitely one of the goofier titles in the collections. Playing much like the others, you'll take your character across the world to fight from? There are multiple ending choices, but doesn't play much different than the Strikers titles, which it may actually share some assets with. Gunbird 2. Advancing the title in its own way, this game is a greater adventure, allowing player characters to partner up throughout, impacting the story elements, and allowing a player to change characters upon a death. Notably, the Dreamcast release of this title included Morrigan, the effective spokeswoman for the Darkstalkers franchise, but she is absent from this version. Gunbarridge. Rounding out the dozen titles is a breakout-style brick-breaking game. This quirky title features references to the previous titles in the form of cameos, but it is its own story complete with odd spelling choices. A not unpleasant, but still jarring, selection to be included, this title is no shooting star, but may be one of the brightest designed games available. Reviewing the titles across the board, there's a few adjustments made to each, which are where this collection thrives. While I didn't get a chance to put it in practice, the titles feature 2-player support, allowing players to split up the Joy-Cons. To talk about the video options, you'll notice the collections allow you to rotate the display. Given the wonderful flip grip lets players to take advantage of the Switch's modular nature, if a game has a portrait display, you should definitely use it. Or, if you're on the wild side, you can play portrait games in landscape mode and remap the controls to make them side-scrollers. There are a few filters available, but in many cases, you're just going to want to turn those off and stick with the unaltered image. If you're looking for a fun ride more than a challenge, Dip Switch settings lets you increase your lives, continues, and bombs. This is a definite benefit if you are not playing for pride. And don't be ashamed about playing in monkey mode either. Sadly, modern advancements such as rewind functions are not available. Give you some general tips about the gameplay in the titles. You usually get a few hits the more you are powered up, only reducing the strength of your attacks. Bombs will traditionally clear the screen of incoming fire, so don't be afraid to use them if you want to keep your current weapon strength. I had more fun with the Sengoku trilogy, the Gunbird duology, and the Dragon Blades and Soul Divide titles. If I could pick only one collection, Alpha has a more interesting visual sense than Bravo, but Bravo has more gameplay variety. Outside of Gunbarridge, that is. Much cheaper than buying an arcade cabinet, these two collections provide great options for 11 classic pickles. Classic and quirky shooters, and one brick-breaking side experiment. With a fair amount of customization to make this game as easy or as hard as the player can take, the pair can provide a fair amount of challenge for a true masochist, or an entertaining few hours for an air combat amateur like myself. That's it for this dive into the Tsundoku Zone, but the stack never ends.
Dumb question.
Yeah.
The thing can still record when it's in the background?